Hello everybody, Charlie's Cards here. Tonight I bring to the table a blast from the past. The other day I was opening a box of cards and this card was there. I opened a pack of 1990 score and here's the story of the 1989 San Francisco Oakland earthquake, or what in baseball lore is known as the World Series earthquake. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about the World Series earthquake and what had happened there. It was a pretty crazy event for that particular moment in time. So the time was October 17th, 1989, and the Giants were playing the A's, and they were in Candlestick Park, and the TV cameras were on, and the announcers were on the field talking about the game that was about ready to start at 5:30 p.m. that evening of October 27th, 1989, when all of a sudden the TV cameras went out. I remember I was living on the east side of Sacramento then, and I had just sat down to watch the World Series between an amazing event between the Giants and the A's, which is pretty much a bridge that separates the two cities. And it was in Candlestick Park that night, and it presented itself as one of the most powerful and devastating earthquakes to a large metropolitan area that's ever happened. It being the Bay Area, the very populated community. And so the TV cameras went out, and the game was supposed to start at 5:30 p.m. that evening. It was Game 3 of the World Series. And so far, the World Series, the A's had dominated Game 1 and Game 2. And so they were preparing for Game 3 when a 6.9 earthquake devastated the Bay Area. And it did a lot of damage in Oakland, in San Francisco, because it was built on unstable ground, and back then a lot of the retrofitting was not built into the codes for a lot of the structures in the Bay Area, or as well as San Francisco. So there was a lot of buildings that collapsed. And because when the buildings collapsed, the gas mains would break, and that started several large fires. And it also, water mains broke, and there was water everywhere. And one of the big events that happened was that the Cypress Street viaduct collapsed. And I don't know if any of you recall, but this is an image of the Cypress Street viaduct. What it is it's a double-decker freeway. So there's the regular streets down here, just along the city, and then this is the freeway. This is the old Interstate 80, or what they call now is the 880 interstate. And since the Giants were playing the A's, there weren't a lot of people out, but there definitely were cars out. It was taking place, so a lot of folks were in front of their TV, as well as the game in Candlestick Park being sold out. But when this collapsed during the earthquake, you can see from some of the back images here how this portion of the freeway collapsed on the lower portion all the way down there, and then some around the corner. It was about a mile to a mile and a quarter of freeway that had collapsed, and this was the only piece that had remained standing. And you look at it, I mean, it just basically just snapped. I mean, the whole thing just broke off, and buildings collapsed. In the event, after the TV cameras came back on, they began to realize, the extent of damage in the community. And so they've definitely postponed the game. And Fay Vincent was the commissioner of baseball back then. And they had him come on and talk about, the effect to the community, and that they were going to postpone the game, and they didn't know when they were going to play it again. So in that process, 67 people lost their lives. And there was over $5 billion in damage to San Francisco and Oakland and to the community. It was felt as far away as Watsonville. And I was in Sacramento and I felt it. I mean, the chandelier in my living room was swinging at the event of it. And at that point, I knew what had happened. It was pretty crazy that you're watching a World Series game and the TV goes out. I mean, basically, they totally lost power. And that's why this card calls it the lights out candlestick. Basically, it lost all power. There wasn't panic inside the stadium, and there was nobody hurt or killed inside the stadium. Fortunately, the stadium remained standing and didn't have much damage. There was some damage, but nothing fell. This is a part of the Bay Bridge. So the Bay Bridge is from Oakland to San Francisco, and a portion of the bridge, the top part of the bridge, collapsed on the bottom part. There was actually people driving on the upper portion that drove off this and down, and so there was one person that was killed here too. And this is more of the Cypress Street viaduct that just basically collapsed. This collapsed all the way down to the ground. I mean, just pancaking cars. And so it was just an amazing undertaking. This is San Francisco, where the buildings had collapsed and just burnt to the ground. So it's just a devastating occurrence. So I thought it'd be pretty neat to bring out my 1989 World Series hat and talk a little bit about the earthquake that happened that they call the World Series earthquake. And it went on to be a great outcome for my Oakland A's. It was their last World Series, the 1989 World Series champions. They swept the San Francisco Giants in 4 games, and they played the third game 10 days later from October 17th. They played it on October 27th, the evening of October 27th. So Fay Vincent, then the commissioner, met with the mayors and the governor of California and decided to honor the victims by allowing the city to heal before they played the game again. And after the A's had swept the World Series, they actually will be a historic event in saying that it was the only World Series where the World Series champions did not pop a bottle of champagne. So they did not celebrate with champagne. Instead, they celebrated by providing memorial and financial relief to the victims and their families. Instead of popping a bottle of champagne in celebration, they honored them with a moment of silence. And even though they were very happy that they'd done it, of course, they had done it for the the city and the surrounding area. Unfortunately, there was a loser in the event too, but that was a devastating 15 seconds. The earthquake lasted 15 seconds, and in that time, it had created $5 billion in damage. So the freeway that I showed you, they had to rebuild all that, and it took a long time. And I was living in the Bay Area then, and I just remember, I remembered, what all that freeway looked like and what the Bay Bridge was. Even though I was all the way out in Sacramento, I had lived there when I was a young man and drove around there as a young man, and was able to watch the 70 World Series, but I didn't remember them like I did remember the 89 because I was obviously a lot older. They didn't have a parade as much either because there was no place to really celebrate because the city was just devastated. So I thought that was pretty neat that they actually honored the earthquake with a baseball card. So I just wanted to take a minute to reflect on remembering Candlestick Park and the Bay Area, and the great team that the A's were then, the 89. Dave Stewart was the pitcher that just dominated the San Francisco Giants, as well as defense from Ricky Henderson and Carney Lansford and Jose Canseco and the Bash brothers. They went on to sweep the World Series, and it was a good time, even though it was a very difficult time. So I just wanted to share some of the things that I'd went through and some of the things that I learned from it, and share some pictures of it so that we can all remember the past as baseball being an America's pastime. When I look at the game of baseball, I see why America honors baseball as the American pastime, and just the amount of reverence that baseball has for America and the communities that they're in. I still like baseball and hope that it remains that way. And so in my future videos here, I want to begin to talk about some of the things that made baseball America's pastime. And I wanted to start with the one that affected me the most, the one that I experienced the most, and that was the day that the lights went out at Candlestick Park. So this is Charlie's Cards. I appreciate you watching. If you could give me a thumbs up, and if you went through this earthquake, tell me what you experienced. Give me a comment. And I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, because I got a lot more of this Baseball's America Pastime series. So thank you for your time. This is Charlie Cards, over and out.